this computer. Okay. Hi, Jay.
Hey,
Hi. Thank you so much for joining me and the listeners to do this podcast. Um, as you know, this year is the 10th annual Fall Conference, and our theme is Be a Leader That You Would Follow. And I thought that you could chat with us about what being a leader means to you and what you are advocating for in your practice. How does that sound?
I'm here for that.
Awesome. All right. So I guess we'll start. For those who may not know you, do you want to start by saying, tell us where you work, your position, and kind of your career thus far in the sector?
Sure. So my name's Jay Baglole. My pronouns are they, them. I currently work at Tiny Tot on Pope Ave and teach our pre-K program. I've been in the field for 13 years, and during that time, I've had the opportunity to work with every age group from infants to school age. I've taught kindergarten, I've been an inclusion support assistant, a cook, a supervisor,
Oh.
uh, right? In 2016, I graduated from Holland College with my diploma in early childhood education. And this fall, I started a new journey as a full-time student at UMB, working towards my Bachelor of Education in Early Childhood.
Wow. So you're not busy at all?
Not at all, though I have
No.
so much free time.
What is your favorite thing about being a frontline educator?
Oh, this one was really tough to kind of narrow it down. So I have three. My favorite things about being a frontline educator are the relationships that you build with children and families, celebrating those accomplishments and being in awe of the children as they exceed their own expectations, and observing children thriving in their unique authenticity.
Those are top. I hear that. Um, you bring something to your practice that you're very passionate about, both at your center and in your advocacy outside of work. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, absolutely. So over the last few years, I've begun to mindfully and age appropriately teach children and their families about gender diversity, pronouns, and making community connections. As an educator who identifies as non-binary, it's been interesting and rewarding to challenge the gender norms and the ideas outside of the binary. In our center, I'm encouraged and supported to provide representation for all underrepresented folks in our community. Outside of work, I facilitate a program called Roots and Shoots in partnership with Peers Alliance and Sierra Club Wild Child. This is a space for adults who are the roots to connect with each other, and a space for gender expansive children, which are the shoots, and their siblings to play and thrive together in a nature-based environment. This summer, I had the opportunity to partner with Wild Child and collaborated on a 1-week summer camp for gender creative and expansive children and their siblings. And this was one of the most rewarding opportunities I've had in my career. Over the past 2 years, I facilitated with the Queer Youth Collective and recently had the opportunity to adapt Peers Alliance Braver Spaces workshop through an early childhood lens, which I presented to the second year ECE students at Holland College.
Wow. That's so great that it can kind of overlap. Like, as you said, I love when you said the first opening age appropriate, because I think sometimes we hear
Yeah.
that and it kind of scares some people. So I love how you kind of start in the age appropriate and then right to kind of adults kind of coming into the sector. That's awesome. Kind of a full circle situation you got there.
Yeah.
I've asked you this before when an ECDA member reached out to me for resources in their endeavor of creating a policy in this area. And at the time, I knew you would be able to help us, but I wanted to make sure that I wasn't placing something on you that you may not have wanted, sort of being that poster person, if you will. Can you talk a little bit about your willingness to help and guide and engage others and kind of your feelings on that?
Sure. So I'm just going to start by saying that the perspectives that I share are only from my experience, and not every trans, non-binary, or gender diverse person has the same values, beliefs, opportunities, or experiences. Sometimes being the only person in the room with a unique difference can be mentally and emotionally draining when you're expected to be the only point of educational resources to many people. My journey hasn't always been an easy one, and I've been met with many mountains and roadblocks along the way. It was through those experiences that I noticed there seems to be a gap. I've always hoped to inspire people to seek education and provide inclusive spaces for folks like me, and the children in our care who aren't able to advocate for themselves to live and thrive.
So love that. So your answer to me, just for those listening, when I asked you this, was sort of a sure, always happy. Is that sort of, I mean, I don't want to mentally exhaust, but you just have this way of creating a safe space for me to ask questions. Like you and I have had conversations about this before. And so um, I guess what would be, it's kind of a hard follow-up, but
That's great.
but you're so what I'm hearing is, your journey was tough, but you're seeing that there's just not a lot of education out there. So you're happy to sort of be that kind of branch, if you will. Is that kind of
Absolutely. Yeah. I'd love to be that branch to then offer those resources or even just start those conversations with
yeah,
folks to get people thinking
right,
or like being mindfully aware of the language that they're using or their intent or maybe even their personal biases.
right. And not just and just like you say, I guess to kind of start it, you're not going to and like because like you say, it's your perception, your perspective rather. So yeah, you don't know all of the answers and all of the things, but you can certainly kind of start us or lead us to the right direction. So awesome, thank you. um I'm sure in your journey you have come across people who are not as understanding or open to learn. Sometimes could be a generational thing. Can you talk a little bit about what it means to you to have someone be open, even if they don't fully understand?
So circling back to where we just ended. So at this
Yeah.
stage in my advocacy, I love having conversation with folks who are curious to learn as long as questions are respectful. So for me, showing interest in learning is far different from asking those nosy questions.
Right.
So it could look like, um, tell me more about your journey rather than what did your name used to be?
Right.
Or you
Yeah.
used to be this person, right? Because sometimes
Mhm.
having those conversations can be challenging, but
Mhm.
I understand that there's a need to know.
Right.
So it is our nature to ask questions and to make sense of the world. Look at the children that we work with. Like this is part of their daily routine. They
Sure.
ask questions about
Yeah.
everything.
And are super intrusive.
It's very, and
Yeah.
I mean, theirs is typically coming from uh, a place of discovery and they want to
Mhm.
know more and they're trying to figure it out. And I understand that that's the same for adults as well, but
Mhm.
there's a little bit more, I
Nosy.
don't nosy, but in a very pure way.
Right.
They
Right.
don't know that they're trying to challenge
Right.
the
Right. Right.
question. They're just making sense.
Right.
So it's okay to challenge what we don't know and consider our own values and beliefs. But like, let's be honest, change is hard at any age.
Right.
It's human nature to want to categorize and box in information to make sense of it.
Yeah.
If folks approach me and ask me a question, I have to assess if it's a safe person, or if it's a safe space for me to actually educate.
Mhm.
So we aren't expected to understand everything in this world. However, I strongly believe that we should be respectful of others' identities, regardless if it's something we understand or not.
Mhm.
For me, I still don't understand everything. The world is constantly evolving, and I'm constantly evolving and changing and learning as well. So when people inquire about me or my community and seek education, it shows me that I'm valued and appreciated, even if they aren't fully there yet themselves.
Right. I love that. That makes me feel good that you feel that because, yeah, that's awesome. Um, to fellow educators who are listening, or maybe parents, you never know who's going to listen to this after. What are some local resources that we can access to guide these sort of conversations? So if we don't have, a J in our corner, or somebody who can lead us in these sort of journeys, are there any resources that you know of? I know you had mentioned like Peers Alliance. Is there anything you can lead educators and maybe parents that they're an educator but they're parents and they're trying to create those brave spaces?
Absolutely. So you can access some workshops through Peers
Oh,
Alliance.
okay.
PEI Trans Network has many wonderful resources listed on their website, from local contributors to resources from Transcare BC. They cover things like how to create a gender inclusive environment or what to do when you make mistakes. Peers Alliance has information about community groups such as Roots and Shoots or the Queer Youth Collective. If you check your local libraries for adult resources such as Gender Born, Gender Made, or The Gender Creative Child by Diane Aronsaft, or seek children's literature featuring gender diverse characters and gender neutral pronouns, such as It Feels Good to Be Yourself by Teresa Thorne, What Are Your Words by Catherine Locke, or From the Stars in the Sky to the Fish in the Sea by Kai Chang Tom.
Awesome. I'm gonna get those titles from you later.
Absolutely.
They sound really nice. Can you talk a little bit about things that directors, ECEs, any center staff can do right now to help create what we've come to call brave spaces? Like, what are those little things that staffs, that centers can do to just kind of have that inclusive environment?
Sure. So first and foremost, representation always matters. Even if your program doesn't have any gender diverse folks in it, I can promise you that someone in your center knows a gender diverse person. Our island's culture is rich in diversity, be it culture, gender, ability, or age. By highlighting the island's community at large, instead of the community within our center walls, it's giving children the tools to be inclusive social beings. Think about the books that you're reading in your program. Think about the resources displayed in your classroom. What do they represent? Is it inclusive for everybody? As uncomfortable as it is, we need to reflect on our own values and biases and self-evaluate where we might have room to grow. Start noticing how gendered everything is in your classrooms when you're out shopping. How much gendered language do you use in the run of the day? Start looking at your policies, your intake forms, your records. Is the language gendered? For example, does it say mom or dad versus parent or guardian? Does it say brother or sister versus sibling? What does this represent to same-sex couples or gender diverse siblings? Yeah, do your intake forms leave space for pronouns or chosen names? Sometimes children are exploring who they are and their gender expansiveness, and they might be trying out different names or pronouns in your space. Are you telling them who they are? Or are you actively listening to provide a brave space for them to explore who they are? This can change from day to day. We should be honoring children for who they are when they tell us who they are. Simple ways that you can do it quickly and immediately would be to change your email to add your pronouns. It could be introducing yourself with your pronouns when you're meeting new people like parents or staff. Even with kids, then it just encourages that language to start to develop. We're encouraging people to wear pronoun pins. It communicates that you value others' identity and that it's a brave and welcoming space to explore and share our own pronouns.
Those are awesome examples. And like you say, really little, like really so easy to change, whether it's those forms that you look back on. And I really liked how you started that. Even if we don't have anybody at our center who that we know of, has a different gender or what have you, it sort of creates the space for when we do, or like you say, they would know somebody who may be, and it's getting the children used to that language. I love that. I think it's sort of like, this is a weird comparison and you're going to hate it probably, but you know how like centers have peanut allergies and it's like, okay, right now we don't have anybody who's allergic. So let's just bring out the peanut butter. It's like, let's just pretend there's always a peanut allergy and just be a safe place.
Absolutely.
Do you love that example or did I go?
That's just it. These kids exist in the school system.
Right.
So are we teaching our children now, even though that they're not represented in the center, of who they're going to meet? And it's not going to be a challenge for them to navigate it then because it's already been taught and instilled that these folks exist.
Right. And I like the email signature. I've heard some people, some aunts and uncles perhaps, and they're like, no, I'm female. They know, everyone knows it, and I don't need to say that I'm female. And it's sort of like, it's not for you necessarily, it's so that once you're corresponding with somebody, they can then know that you're open and that they can share their pronouns with you and that sort of thing. So I think that's really important. I think there's, people who haven't jumped on that. It's they're sort of afraid to, like, why do I need to do that? I'm very visibly a female or whatever. But you and I have talked about that before. You can be visibly a female and be struggling inside, or whatever. So love that. Those are great ideas. Thank you.
Thanks.
Um, if you were to look ahead to, let's say, here's an interview question, ahead to 5 years down the road, or even 10, what would your vision be for the children and families in this sort of journey of creating brave spaces? What would you hope to see sort of have developed in our world?
Oh, this one was challenging because there were so many things, but I feel like we're already on that path.
Right.
Right. So my vision is for children and families to have the ability to live and thrive authentically outside of a gender bias and limitations. Children should have the opportunity for gender discovery in a supportive and encouraging environment. And I really hope that gender barriers are a thing of the past and that we can be more mindfully inclusive in our language and practices. So like eliminating boys and girls washrooms and moving to just saying washrooms.
Mm-hmm.
A vision includes centers and staff being equipped to include and explore gender diversity within their classrooms and to have the confidence to advocate, gain resources, and provide brave spaces for these folks to thrive.
I love that. And I think something kind of within that is sort of creating a world where people don't have to come out and it's not this big scary thing. Like, as you sort of mentioned, children are changing who they are every day. And it should just, hey, I'm this. Awesome. Nice to see you today. And then just sort of go with it, just to create that really open space. I hope we get there. And it's people like you who's going to help us get there.
We will get there. Well,
Yeah.
it's the kids in the program that help us get there.
Right, right, right.
They demonstrate that they get it, they know it.
Children are sometimes easier than our aunts and uncles and grandparents.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, Jay, thank you so much for sharing, a lot of your personal self with us, with me, and for challenging us to think more about the little things, the big things that we can do as influencers to help not only the children who are learning, but as I just mentioned, the adults who are around us. So thank you. I know, this is not always comfortable, but as I mentioned, you've helped me personally kind of understand some of these little things that we can do. So I hope we can continue this dialogue, and I hope everyone enjoyed this podcast, learning a little bit about what we can all do, big or little, to continue to create these brave spaces. So thank you, Jay, sincerely.
Awesome. Thanks for the opportunity.
No problem. All right. I'm gonna stop recording.